We are live. Welcome to the Carl Vibe Show and podcast. Thank you for joining us. If you're here, I am with the esteemed James Keenan. I am really excited to have him here on the show. I saw him a little bit up at Phenomicon up in Vernal, Utah, which is a hot spot of the paranormal for UFOs, skinwalkers with Skinwalker Ranch, Blind Frog Ranch, and a whole plethora of strange ancient mysteries and history, from ancient petroglyphs to carvings, pictographs, UFO sightings, all sorts of strange stuff, not only throughout the basin, but throughout the entire region, all throughout Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and the whole area. And James has become an expert and an author of many, not only fictional books to introduce true stories in a digestible manner to young adults and to youth, but now he's also releasing, or maybe already has released, a new work that isn't fiction, but covers a lot of his life work and history and adventures. So without further ado, we're going to bring aboard the one and only James Keenan. Thanks for joining us tonight, James. It's such a pleasure to have you here. I consider you like a tremendous expert on this topic, with everything that I'm fascinated with as well. So how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Carl. Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you've written several books and everything, but everybody has sort of experiences in their life that got them into this topic, or maybe propelled them into it, whether they like it or not. I know that's the case for me. I started out just sort of interested in the paranormal, interested in UFOs growing up as a kid and watching movies. But when things happen to you growing up, you have to wrap your head around that. So I wanted to ask you, James, have you had anything in your experience? I know you were formerly a police officer. Have you had anything in your life that sort of hooked you in the paranormal, or the phenomenon with all of this, to where now you've made it a big part of your life?
Sure. So right from the get-go, I drowned around the age of 2. I had an NDE, and it was I was gone for about 8 to 10 minutes, so it wasn't just a short time. And since that age of 2, I've had like this perfect memory, almost like an adult, where I just remember everything. And I had soon after that an experience with, I guess, what you would consider maybe a shadow personage. And as a matter of fact, my very first book is called Dark Shadows and Catastrophe, because like you'd said, I was in law enforcement and private investigation. And I felt it was better to write fiction and kind of introduce, parts of what had occurred in my real life into that fictional work. But so I was always open to I guess the unexplainable. However, I very science-based most of the time, but I've recognized from an early age that there's this huge possibility that our ancient historical past, especially a lot that's been lost, the ancestors had the same occurrences happening to them. And it seems to have been documented, and at certain periods in mankind's timeline, it seems to have been more active than at others. And then obviously, like you had said in the opening, in certain locations more so than other spots. So after my career, 24 years of investigating, whether it was civil or criminal, I wanted to put to good use my degrees in anthropology, archaeology, and all this history that I had learned. And I wasn't, feeling that it was quite right, that there were a lot of parts missing, and that what we were being told seemed to be someone else's timeline, or what they wanted us to know, not really everything that had occurred. And
like a narrative.
Exactly, their narrative. And the more and more data that I would collect, the more locations I would go to. And when I go to locations, a lot of people say, oh, they went to here and there, and you see the photos, it looks like they're on vacation and they're taking pictures next to stuff, and that's it. But I wanted to collect petroglyphs, pictographs, hieroglyphs, database them, store them, try to find commonality between them, even though they're throughout the world. As I got into this more, I brought along more technology, ground penetrating radar, 3D ground imaging systems, deep metal detection units, long distance radar, to collect non-evasive data of what was underground. So like I could go to a pyramid, which I do. I go to many in Mexico, and I'm standing there, and the 3D ground imaging system I have is attached to my leg underneath my pants. So security, nobody knows I have it, and I'm getting these amazing underground images of what's really there. And some of them are pretty shocking. You know, you're talking about metal objects that are huge, open cavities, and they're saying, oh, there's nothing there. But, you know, sure as heck looks like that in the data. And then I use vector magnetometers to do magnetic readings. And that was a lot of what took place when I was on Skinwalker Ranch that everybody saw in season 2 of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch. So I've come to terms that the unexplainable, this ancient history that's been lost, major world catastrophic events, all melt together. You know, you talk about oral traditions from around the world and things that aren't supposed to exist that I believe really did exist. And I'm open to that, but there's a lot of people that want the scientific data. So what I like to do is I like to provide both. And like you talked about my children's series, I wanted to introduce ufology, cryptozoology, an ancient history and Native American oral tradition to children at an early age. So I shot for around 10 to 14 years of age. But a lot of what are in these 3 books in the series is a lot of the truth, reality. When you're reading it, you'll immediately recognize very specific locations on Skinwalker Ranch or elsewhere on the basin, or you know, around Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado, you know, all kinds of things like that. So that was where I was going with it and wanted to do, and it seemed to work out well.
Yeah, that's really cool. You've taken it a long ways. I can relate to you a lot, like the passion sort of growing and growing, and the quest to understand things that have occurred in your own life and some of those incidents. You look around you, not only to, you know, what are the people that are supposed to know this? What do they know now? And then you run into that. If they do know stuff, it seems like there's a lot that they're hiding. So then you go into the past and you start digging through history, and you see a lot of the cover up going on there, interesting things like that. But you start to thread it together a little bit. But when it really pieces together, and why I love your work is when you actually get out there and do it. Like when I get out from behind the computer and from behind the books, I get caught up in the energy of what I'm studying and reading, and I realize this stuff is all right around me. I live like right here, and it's just amazing to go firsthand and see it, because even just right here by my house down here in St. George, Utah, when I go to the like Anasazi Ridge petroglyphs here, the pictures that they show online are usually just like of a goat or a few basic petroglyphs. But when you go up there, there's carvings of big ant people and strange things that look like acorn shaped craft with figurines inside of it, like people inside, and they come out, and strange insect looking figures with like swirling portals in their hand. And you wonder, how can they carve these intricate circles so well, but then they're carving square heads on the people with horns, and it's so strange, you know. And so as you go, whether you look at it in the past or at the governmental level or anything, it's mind-boggling. But you mentioned, I want to skip back just a little bit. You mentioned that you had an NDE that kind of kicked all of this off, a near-death experience. Did something happen during that near-death experience that you don't mind sharing, that maybe sparked your curiosity, that has helped fueled a lot of this for you?
Yeah. So there's other places after this life. And I always tell people it's extremely difficult to explain because none of the senses that we're used to are used there. And much of what I hear people say they've seen when they've had an NDE or in the afterlife, that's not what happened to me. You don't see light. There is no need. There's no light. You're not using that type of senses. And I like to talk about it more to one individual or two individuals at a time, because I know for a lot of people it treads on their religious beliefs. And, I'm a firm believer that everybody has the right to believe in what they, want to believe. And I don't ever try to change that. I just relay what occurred to me. And I still feel like it opened up maybe different types of senses that I've kept throughout life. And it absolutely helps. Like I said, I try to stay in the scientific aspect, but that's not everything. There's a lot more to life than science. It's not the answer for everything. And, just think about the word paranormal. It's just something that isn't in the norm that we have yet to understand. And, science fiction 50, 60 years ago is science today. So as time, goes on, how much of that paranormal today is just going to be, reality and known science in 50 more years, or even less with the way that technology is speeding up now.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if what everybody is understanding is different dimensions in reality, or time overlaps in the multiverse, or different things like that. If it's all interrelated to what we relate to in this as the afterlife, or this spirit realm, or where these other realities may rub up against our reality. It's not so clear cut as we may like it to be. And I've grown up with different experiences as well. I didn't have a near-death experience, but I did have a really bad kidney infection one time when I was a freshman in high school, to where I had a temperature over like 104, and started seeing sort of like interdimensionally, like you said, sort of opened up perceptions. And you could call it hallucinogenic experience, but it did open my mind as well to understand that maybe there are different realities or perceptions that are beyond just our physical ones that we're born into this world with our physical hardware, with our eyes and our five senses. They're so limited. And I almost wonder if these, in the ancient times or in certain places, that there's like these hot spots or energetic anomalies where that gets amplified either by the geology, or when you walk into it, your natural abilities are sort of peaked when you go into certain areas. I heard a story one time that you told where when you were a police officer, that was very paranormal and very strange, that also opened your eyes. I would love to hear that, because when I had the kidney infection, what I saw was faces and like clown figures in the ceiling that were moving and shape shifting around in the ceiling, like froths of bubbles in the ceiling above my head. And then a figure walked into the room and really scared me, and things like that. But why don't you tell your story, James, about what happened to you when you were on the force?
Sure. So it was night. We were on night shift, and there was a domestic disturbance call. And my partner and my partner had been there more often than I had. It was a family, and the husband and wife were just constantly fighting, and it was getting to the point where it was going to more than likely turn physical. It looked like they were probably on the verge of divorce. And so my partner was just sick and tired of coming to this house. So we went there. The husband lets us in. My partner tells them, I want everybody in the house into the living room right now. So the husband called, the wife came, the kids came, they sat down on the couch. I stayed at the front door. My partner was about 12 feet in front of me right at the living room so I could keep an eye on him. The reason I stopped at the front door is because directly to the left was a staircase that leads up to the second floor. So I just wanted to make sure, that nobody, came in or came down. And so the father said that everybody was there, and my partner starts talking to them and telling them, hey, this has got to stop. We're just going to go ahead and arrest both of you. And the kids are going to be going to CPS, to Child Protective Services. Mm. The 3 kids were, I think, all teenagers, probably between 12 and 15, 16 maybe. And he's talking to them, and then you hear upstairs somebody just, F you. And I mean, it was loud. And I looked upstairs, and it was the hallway. You could see it was probably about 12 steps upward, and it was pretty dark. And my partner is going to ask the husband a question. I'm pretty sure he's going to ask him who else is in the house. And then you just hear a couple people go, get the F out of the house, F you, get out. And my partner starts telling the dad, he said, I told you I want everybody in the house down here now. And then you start hearing more than a crowd. It was a large crowd upstairs, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? I had even, I think at that point, he tells them, he goes, what's going on upstairs? And the dad goes, I can't explain it to you, but everybody is here. And then it gets really loud, and it's just, get the F out, it gets bad, and it sounds like a lot of people, to the point where I told my partner, I said, I'm gonna go up. I pull out my light, I'm flashing it up there. I don't see anyone. You can't feel movement. You would expect there to have been a lot of movement of the house with so many people. And I'm going up the stairs, and as you're entering the hallway, this house was probably built in the early 1980s, where they had that faux wood paneling, on it, and it has all the tree designs, the ovals and everything in there. And I get to the top stairs, and it's pretty loud. I mean, to the point where I'm wondering where the hell all these people are. And my partner, I guess, lost track of me because I crossed into the hallway, and I could hear him calling for backup. And as I'm walking, I start seeing movement, and I'm like, well, what the heck? And I flash the flashlight to the left of me on the wall, and there's hundreds and hundreds of faces in the wall, in the faux wood, and they're moving and watching and screaming and shouting and just yelling all these vulgarities. And I called down, I said, you need to get up here right now. And he pulled out his weapon because he thought there was a confrontation taking place. And I think he even, if I remember, he may have requested to clear the air for emergency traffic. And he comes running up, and he's like, what's going on? And I said, look around. And he goes, what do you mean? And he looks at the panels that I'm showing, and he's like, he was a very religious individual, and he turned white. And he backed down to the 2 or 3 steps down to where he almost fell backwards. And I told him, I said, hold on. At that time, you could hear 2 units responding code 3, lights and siren to the location. They park the vehicles. I'm backed up to where he is too. The officers, I think it was 3 officers. It was a 2-man unit and 1 man. As they're coming through the door, everything just stops. And to this day, I felt that there was just so much negative energy that it released something in that household. And we had to quickly cancel emergency traffic. We said that there was television on upstairs that had a program. We thought, to get the other guys out of the house.
Wow.
And after they left, we talked to the family. We told them, you really have to figure this out, because I wouldn't even know how to help you. Partner wouldn't know how to help you. My partner didn't want to ever come back. He told him, this is it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was just an experience that, as a police officer, you come across a lot of strange things, and that was obviously right up there as just one of the most bizarre incidents that I've had. And I put it into the book even, that the main character lived through that and all that, into my first book, because it was the only way that I could have told that story, years ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you actually went upstairs and saw in the patterns of the wood grain on the wood paneling, contorted faces in the pattern, and they were moving and actually yelling and screaming vulgarities at you, like the wall itself was somehow conscious or alive in some strange way, or your perceptions was seeing it that way with whatever energy was going on in the room. That's just bizarre, man.
Yeah. All the ovals, everything had faces at that point. And then, when the other units got there, everything stopped. It was just and it wasn't real wood paneling. It was that faux wood, that cheap stuff that, they used to put in the hallways or on the walls back in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
Hopefully they don't use it anymore.
It's so fascinating, because then you have to somehow wonder, how does stuff like that and these types of experiences tie into like our ancient history throughout time? Is that it was different, similar sorts of things in a different way happening? And is that what they were drawing on the walls? And so, James, was that incident and others like that, did that propel you into trying to understand it and research the phenomenon in our ancient history? Or what was it that got you into kind of the petroglyphs and the Uintah Basin in specifically?
Sure. Well, when you look at the petroglyphs and the pictographs, most of the time, what do you see? You see normal daily life in them. You're going to see their housing structures. Maize, corn is a big thing that you'll see a lot of. You see them playing musical instruments, dancing, animals in their rituals. Daily life, you'll see artifacts like pottery in the petroglyphs, pictographs. And that's what we should be seeing, right? That's what we would see, what we put into our artwork. Now, in certain cultures around the world, this is completely missing, or 95, 96, 97% of it is what we shouldn't be seeing. And the normal daily life is missing. So for me, it wasn't as much as at first what was there, but what's not there that's really important, because back in those days they had to see it to draw it or to carve it. Mm-hmm. So now in certain parts, especially around northeastern Utah and then into southern Utah downward, you have these certain cultures, the Fremont Barrier Canyon style, San Juan River, which was, around basket maker origination time period. Mostly Barrier Canyon style and Fremont, you have these very interesting petroglyphs of these large anthropomorphic figures that almost seem to be levitating without legs. They have antenna or things coming out of the side of one ear, out of their heads. They're going in and out of these different shapes that now when you look at television or see certain lab experiments take place at the universities, how plasma forms These shapes look a lot like plasma events in a laboratory. It matches identical to what it would shape. So now you're starting to wonder, well, how did they know what a plasma event looks like? So then you got to start taking into account
like the stickman figures that you see everywhere, standing like
figure.
this and with the arms up or down, always squared
Yep.
off
2
arms and
dots
legs at
under
the
each
90,
arm.
and then there's a dot under each arm and different anomalies. Yeah, and they look exactly like certain energetic plasma forms that emanate when you do certain experiments. Yeah, when you create magnetic anomalies and things, these shapes appear. Yeah.
Right. Or, when Comet Sighting Spring went past Mars in 2014, it came so close that it caused this massive plasma event to take shape, and it looked like a huge hourglass. And that event was the most meteors ever recorded on any planet occurring. And this hourglass shape that formed, I mean, it was massive. And the nucleus was only 0.3 miles across. And you see all these hourglass shapes in the petroglyphs with the stickman figure and all that. So for me, it confirmed that we were talking about some type of catastrophic event that was extraterrestrial in origin, possibly occurring in the sky that caused all types of other occurrences afterward. So, you start wanting, well, I wanted to start tracking, where were these and other people have done. There's been a lot of physicists that have hypotheses on these, events, and they've tracked them. So it wasn't me reinventing the wheel, but I was, with my background in anthropology and archaeology, I'm able to go more into the cultures that created them and try to match that with oral traditions, with the groups and the tribes that were in those areas. And so let's take these events that we see, this rock art. Now let's start searching to see if we can find oral tradition between the Native Americans that goes with the rock art, and you start building this bigger picture. And when I was going through UCSB and getting my degrees, you're taught that this is mythology, this is folklore, this never occurred, this was their way of explaining things. And I kept scratching my head, and I was like, something doesn't seem right. So I never quite felt like we were getting the full picture. We were just getting what my professor taught them,
Right.
with all this originating from a time in the 1700s or 1800s when they didn't have the technology that we have today, that suddenly builds clarity on what we're seeing, because we're actually able to reproduce these events at a smaller level in the lab. And when it matches 100% what you see in these petroglyphs, it makes for a pretty good case that what occurred in the distant past was a worldwide major catastrophic event. It wasn't just one that plunged us into dark ages multiple times, wiped out 99% of cultures and civilizations, including technology and the media or the data that stored their history. And the only thing left that would survive is what? What medium would survive? Rocks. They're going to survive everything. And what's going to survive historically? Oral tradition. That's all that's going to survive. So I wanted to be open-minded with what has occurred in my past. I wanted to be able to bring the science so that I could collect data and at least provide an alternative for people to look at and say, hey, you know what? Maybe because this can be repeated in the lab or it's repeatable data, maybe there is more to it than this just having been mythology or rituals or events taking place when they were under hallucinogenic drugs or something. And you can't even if something like that were used, who's not to say that that's not the way to enter some other reality or something that we're not capable of seeing with the senses that we have, but that it opens up maybe other aspects of not just our brain, but whatever the soul is or our thought, that our ability to think outside of our body, that's the way to help open it, or one of the ways to affect it. There's obviously other ways that I believe, like our frequency and vibration changes, which don't require a ton of technology. You see lasers being used in all these devices, and they're talking about the need for, like a black hole energy to form a portal. But look at the Native Americans. They used instruments, music, and singing and a mindset to change the frequency. And think of the way that we operate at like 7.8 hertz. That's nothing. I mean, that's what the earth, resonates at. And maybe it's something as minute and tiny as that's required to open up even a magnetic portal if additional energy around it is available. Or maybe these alternate areas of gravity at certain parts of the planet mixed in with these light changes in frequency and vibration are necessary to cause an origin or origination of some type of unexplainable event.
It's very possible, because you see all around the world, not just in the Uinta Basin, but you see out from there, clear down through here, across Nevada, through Arizona, all around the Grand Canyon. And then you go around the world and across the United States into the mound builder cultures. And like you said, the Fremont people, everywhere you go, we've got cities built over the top of ancient places and reservoirs filled up, covering ancient cities and petroglyphs that tell a different story than what we've been taught in the public school. And as you go out and you look at it, it is vastly different. And the story that it tells, even all the way over when you look at the Dogon tribe in Africa, the petroglyphs there look just like so similar to the ones here by my house and the ones up in the Uinta Basin, that it makes you wonder, like, they had to have all seen this up in the sky, or there had to have been some sort of a phenomenon or energetic shift. Maybe the planet moved into a part of the solar system or the universe where all of the phenomenon was amplified as a whole, whereas now we're just experiencing it around localized hotspots where maybe during the ancient past there was that meteorite shower, and now we just have the meteorite nuggets in those locations, whereas it was a whole field that was covering the solar system for a time. I don't know. It's very interesting, but it makes you wonder, James, what do you think was going on back in that ancient time, to where you have a few little carvings of goats and some grass over here, and then huge murals of these giant, what look like insectoid people or extraterrestrial people all over the rock art? What do you think happened?
Yeah, like I said, there's certain locations, the Uinta Basin. For me, my hypothesis has changed to the point now where I believe that the Uinta Basin has a location that was where the ancients survived a major catastrophic event. I believe it wasn't just a single spot. There were multiple spots. One of those locations was where we have this origin story of Adam and Eve. And that was probably, more towards the Middle East. And one was here in the Uinta Basin in northeastern Utah. In regards to, there being goats on one petroglyph and then these other anthropomorphic and zoomorphic figures elsewhere. Well, something was occurring there. Maybe the area was more energetic, like you said. Maybe there was a meteor, comet, or asteroid strike that had enough energetic energies to create something that we're just not yet aware of naturally. Or this part of the planet was facing where these energetic particles came from the middle of the galaxy, and the energy allowed for whatever to shift vibrationally, for that frequency to alter. And I always tell people, I mean, just think about our bodies that were just vibrating so, at such a slow level that our bodies are being held together like this. But if you were to somehow create a greater vibration by sending some type of energy at the body, you could just explode or fall apart. So that's capable of happening to anything, even rock. So when you see all these, like Amaramuru, the Peruvian Stargate, or what looked to be the same type of recess in rocks up at Dry Fork Canyon with petroglyph symbols above it that look like a portal. Why is it that those people in the past, they could have had far greater technology than we did, and we're using this? And I always tell people that, maybe Adam and Eve weren't the physicist and the biologist that survived. Maybe, Adam was the guy that cleaned the schools at night, and, Eve worked at the grocery store, and they just happened to be the ones that survived. So that technology was lost, or how to create it was lost. There was certain technology that survived that people around the world were able to use until it broke down and they no longer knew how to fix it. They saw what great power it had, so now they started mimicking that by creating things like, let's say there was a pyramid 500,000 years ago that, had some type of power supply system or whatever. And as it went on, they lost that knowledge of what it really was. And then, 50 generations later, they built what looked like a pyramid, but it didn't have the technology in it, but it's still ancient. So we have to, at some point, start piecing together just how far back in the past our ancient, distant past goes. We have to be open-minded to that technology. If there was a great deluge, is now at the bottom of the ocean, or was ripped back into the mantle by the tectonic plates coming up and down, and there's always one-offs. We always discover these ancient artifacts that we have no idea what they are. Obviously there's one-offs here and there, so it's just a matter of piecing it together. And obviously if we did that at a worldwide level, we'll never do it. So
right,
I focused in originally in Mexico, and what's interesting is what I was seeing in Mexico over the years led me up to the Uinta Basin in northeastern Utah, because there's this major connection in oral tradition, in language, in petroglyphs, hieroglyphs, pictographs, that everything I saw in Mexico led me to believe that origin for the people in Mexico even is northeastern Utah.
Do you think that's up around the Uinta? Is there a lake that was up there, a crater lake, that may have had ancient civilization and dwelling around there that was part of a vast ancient empire during the Aztec time? Or how does that all connect?
Well, Lake Uinta was it was actually two lakes that ended up connecting at some point. Just a massive lake, and you're talking about 48 to 54 million years ago, but it shrunk, and then it got large again and shrunk, and like you said, who knows what was here or how long it truly lasted, because look at the amount of flora and fauna that have been found in the area. Look at the fossils that have been found. And
giant sea turtles up there. It's like one of the only places in the world where you're clear up in the top of the mountains in the Red Rock Sandstone Desert, and you have petrified giant fossils for giant sea turtles. It's super bizarre. Like there had to have been some waterway prehistorically or anciently, and who knows the sea travel that could have occurred all globally that was a lot more vast and prolific than history tells us, you know.
Exactly.
So James, you found this connection into the ancient past. Do you think it goes back into I mean, you found stuff up at like Blind Frog Ranch and at Skinwalker Ranch in your own investigations that make this connection to like ancient people coming through and different people coming up through the Uinta Basin, not only in ancient civilization inhabiting the land, but then lots of different people coming through who are up to all sorts of different things in the area, sometimes looking for the ancient gold and then inhabiting it and fighting. And then you have the more modern legends of the Utes and the curses at Skinwalker Ranch and everything. There's just so much that has seemed to have gone on up in that region. But that ancient connection with the petroglyphs is what always gets me, because it feels like there is, like you said, an origin to the story that occurs up there in the basin. So do you feel like from what you found firsthand, does that speak to an Aztec connection and trade routes and a vast empire, or do you think it was like an extraterrestrial connection, or both? Or
so I'm not going to go into the extraterrestrial. I mean, maybe that was origin millions and millions of years ago. But what I'm able to show through oral tradition and the petroglyphs and pictographs is that it looks like at some point we had what we would consider giants in the area. And it's interesting because there's stories by the Navajo who didn't come to that area. They came from the north. They got here later than other bands and tribes. But their discussion about these white giants known as the Starnake, they were miners. That's what they most know about them, is they were miners, and their tools made noise. So what does that signify? That it had to have been pneumatic, it had to have been electrical, or something along that line. And at some point, these giants enslaved the lesser tribes and made them work for them in the mines. What were they mining? That's a big question, because there's so many stories about the gold that's in the Uintas, and then now at Blind Frog Ranch, the amount of iridium that I've personally checked with an XFR gun is amazing. But so from looking around and all that, I firmly believe that we're looking at an ancient site that more than likely was where not just the giants, but their enslaved humans survived a major catastrophic event. And it had to have taken a long period of time before they were able to come back up. And during this time, it looks, and now you're going into some of these stories of what you know as Kershenab, which is the ancient sacred mines, or you hear about the Rhodes mine with the Mormons, or the Mormon mine. Mm-hmm. Well, supposedly there's this mine that's full of gold. But as you dive deeper into the history, it seems more like they entered somewhere underground. And remember that I've trekked and I've shown at a lot of presentations and on other shows that there's this huge underground cavern system running east and west and north and south on the basin. And I've even been underground, probably down to a quarter mile, until we ran into a huge sump, which is almost like an underground lake. So we have all this underground system, and somewhere up in the above La Point in the Uintas, I firmly believe is what people call Ker Shanab, but I think it's an ancient site where the ancients survived, meaning the giants and humans. It seemed that it could have been this massive gold. And as they grew in population, they just kept mining that ore out, smelting it and storing it in other locations. So they cached, CACHED, cached the gold into other locations. So now you talk to the other Native Americans and they say, well, Ker Shanab is the walls are paved in gold. Well, it's not that they're paved in gold. It's that it's this huge gold nugget, you can think of it as. So the walls are obviously gold. Now, obviously, they stored artifacts underground, and it's probably a storage site for data records of the past. And then you start talking to like the Shoshone, the Sanpete group, that Chief Wakara was a part of, or the Timpanogos. And you hear that it was so sacred to them that they also buried their leaders and their gods in there as well. So we know who the leaders are, but who are their gods? Are the gods the giants? And all the way down into Mexico, the giants were worshipped as gods, but at some point the humans revolted because they were being enslaved, and they recognized it, and they killed off the giants, or the giants returned back to the stars. So that's an interesting, take too. Why did they even add that unless maybe there were dirigibles, that were being used back then? And, if you saw somebody coming down in a hot air balloon or something of that nature, where are they coming from? They're coming from space or the stars. So maybe they went back that way. Like I said, I believe that this area, because of the precious metals, maybe what caused the catastrophe, whether it was an asteroid or meteor, it's energetic enough to have caused energies that still exist on the basin. Look at the way that the basin is formed. It looks like this, like a huge satellite dish, Yeah. So maybe the way that it's geologically put together, it's just this coming together of all these different possibilities all in one spot. And obviously you have a few of those around the world for this to have occurred. But so I'm a firm believer that this is a historical location that we're looking for. And then Ker Shanab is where the Great Spirit dwells, and Towats, the god for what are now the Ute. Remember that Ute is a recent terminology for a bunch of bands and tribes that came together. They believe in Towats. But when you look at Ker Shanab, Ker is really ancient Gallic. It's Kareg, and Shanab is ancient Hebrew. And Kareg means stone dwelling, and Shanab is guardians of the doors. So put that together, and another interesting thing too, if you want to get into skinwalkers. So the skinwalkers up in northeastern Utah, I firmly believe, are a secret society that are protecting the underground systems.
Okay.
And they used.
I agree, James. I'm so glad that you said that. I haven't been brave enough to really say that, but there seems to be strange other markings and things like that around in the area that allude to it being protective in nature. I don't know. That's just my
100%.
opinion. It's very fascinating. But go on. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that just like
Oh
hit a
yeah,
button for me that is designed as a protective measure at some energetic level, and you've got symbols there that go not only in the ancient past, but almost like it's revisited even Masonic symbols in the area and around, and it
a
carries on
lot.
and on. Yeah, it's very strange, and so almost like people that are in the know in the secret organization or something are revisiting to revamp or reconnect this phenomenon in order to protect whatever's there or access to whatever's there, whether it's a portal or a treasure cache or whatever it is. But there's something real that's going on there. um, I mean, it's been studied by Bigelow and the government and everybody for a long time because there is something to this. But I didn't mean to interrupt you there. That just really got me excited that you said that.
Sure. In ancient Hebrew, ob, in slang was their necromancers. And look what the skinwalkers are, the shapeshifters. They're very similar. But think about this. So the Navajo are the group that the Yinalushi, which we know as skinwalkers, come from. Supposedly the Ute defeated the Navajo and they left the area. So tell me this, why the hell would the Yinalushi, that are these self-serving dark art witches that practice Adish Gash, which is dark and sympathetic magic, help the Navajo, who they absolutely hate? They don't like their own kind. Why would they help them get back at the Ute? And Junior Hicks, who spent 55 years studying everything up on the Uinta Basin, was told that the Yinalushi aren't at Skinwalker Ranch or even on Fort Duchesne. They're up in Dark Canyon, which
Dark
is
Canyon.
northwest 18 miles of Skinwalker Ranch. And guess where Dark Canyon is? It is
Right by
right
Blind Frog
next.
Ranch.
No, it's right next to the entrance of the largest underground system that you can enter at Pole Creek Sink,
Really?
which is where the underground lakes are. And it goes all the way to where you just said, Blind Frog Ranch, which we know from satellites has at least 1.9 miles of not collapsed cavern systems at possibly the same level, quarter mile further down. And think of, maybe because those caverns are inundated with water, they're the ones that have survived. So if you pump that water out, you're going to collapse them too. But there's Mosby Mountain, which has ice caves on it that we know of. We've been there. Mosby Sink is exactly a mile and a half directly north above Blind Frog Ranch. So you put this secret society in Dark Canyon where they can access the underground because they've been there for thousands of years guarding whatever is down there, whether it be technology, ancient records, just a sacred site of the leaders and the gods that are buried there. And what better way than in the last 30 or 40 years to introduce the skinwalkers and the Yinalushi to just scare the hell out of everybody that is in that area. And that's not to say that other things don't take effect, because it's not a phenomenon, it's a lot of phenomena occurring. So you have to ask yourself another question. Is the energy there creating phenomena, or is phenomena coming to the energy because it's attracted to it?
Right.
And that's a huge question that needs to be answered. And origin, I'm 100% sure, is underground, because I can tell you there's stuff, at least that I've 3D ground imaged on the Mesa, that's going to blow people's minds. And I'm just not quite ready to release that information yet. I want to do it in the near future. I know of multiple cave entrances. Unfortunately, it's on Ute land, which you can't access. That more than likely it's east of Skinwalker Ranch. So you enter there, you go under the mesa, and what's there is deeper and then goes under around Homestead 2, around the triangle. It's just a matter of finding the right access. Just like in Blind Frog Ranch, they're always talking about needing to find a dry access entry to the cavern system. And you think about it, I mean, other than the state of Utah putting up a lot of barriers in regards to the creek that's right next to it, you would have to have a dry entry, because if you pump that out, you're going to collapse that system.
Right.
More than likely it'll collapse. And then you're not, if there's an access to wherever Karg Shanab is, you've killed it. And I'm almost 100% convinced that Karg Shanab is not on Blind Frog Ranch, but it's possible. Remember how I told you they were caching the gold and other metals when they were removing it? That there were multiple other sacred mines that Thomas and Caleb Rhodes talked about. Wakara talked about it, that Toat was guarding. Well, guess where one of those might be? Is on Blind Frog Ranch, or just a bit north of Blind Frog Ranch.
That's so interesting. So, so it would make sense that they would use this story of it being like a curse or something between the Utes over the slavery, and it'd be based upon revenge, because that would be like another layer within the mythos in order to hide the fact that something is still there that's bigger than people expect, and because if it is like a revenge thing, like, oh, well, they were sold into slavery, so we're going to put a curse on the land, and now there's skinwalkers running around. But then why is that this thing they say, don't ever dig on the land, be careful about going and swimming on the lakes, Bottle Hollow Reservoir, the different legends about that, and it all has to do with stuff being under the ground. And it does make you wonder if there is an underground cave system, and you don't only wonder, you've scanned and seen it, and you've been in some of these caves, so better that there is something going on, and it is connected to like a honeycomb lava tube system or something, potentially, that's partially sunken with an aquifer, or they've tried to sink it with reservoirs accidentally, has happened. But that's, so you think a lot of it is way deeper underground and a lot more interconnected than people realize so far, or that they're saying.
Correct. It's interesting because that new book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, I think came out, yesterday?
Yeah, our friends over at the Unidentified Celebrity Review, they just popped in the chat. They were just over there reviewing that book on their show earlier today. So shout out to those guys.
Yeah. So mine's on its way. It'll be here tomorrow, so I can read about it. But I want to tell you something that Robert Bigelow didn't want anyone to know. I've shown it in my last two presentations. I was given photographs of it from one of the Bass people that is tired of it not coming out. At Homestead 3 on the far west, the Ute were sneaking in at night, and this stopped at 2016. It's never happened since Brandon has owned the ranch, but they were putting freshly killed animals, their skins and skulls, on the wooden poles out there. And sometimes it was like 7 or 8 at a time. And it was happening not every day, but it was happening off and on for years. So I asked two Native American elders that are just a wealth of knowledge, and they're always so helpful, what they thought it could be. And they said there were 3 possibilities. Possibility 1, that Bigelow was the demonic devil himself, and they wanted to keep him at bay and not allow that evil onto the reservation. The second one was that something was released underground. and they had to put these to lure it back onto the ranch and back underground. And the third possibility was there's something underground, and they're going to say evil, but maybe it's energetic or negative, or maybe there's a magnetic portal that allows connection to somewhere else where those things that live there aren't good. Maybe their perception of being evil is really they're just bad for us. So they put those skins to keep them from coming up out of the ground. So that was just another thing that we have this underground connection again with. It was negative while this was occurring, and I think it was over a 6-year period. And the photos are amazing because there's one of them. It was taken on top of Skinwalker Ridge, and you could see like 8 or 9 freshly killed animal skins hanging there with blood dripping down the poles. So the Ute were obviously disturbed enough to chance going out there and doing this a lot over a 6-year period. So what happened? Did something happen that released something, or something started occurring for those 6 years? And so are we talking about something that's occurring cyclically? Like, was it really at its peak from 1994 through 1998? And recently we're seeing this huge uptick again in unexplainable activity, strangeness occurring. So are we entering that period, and is it in regards to something in the solar system, in the galaxy, or something occurring underground? I personally feel it's underground, just because everything seems to be originating from what's under the Uinta Basin.
Yeah, and it seems like a paradox because you have the legends all based underground and have to do with people coming up out of the cave system or surviving this catastrophe in ancient times, and then with the help of giants or strange people that lived underground with them. But they're also related to being star people, and you get the same from the Grand Canyon all the way up, these same stories, and all over the place like that happened. Like, there's something not normal with these giants, or with the something involved with the people at the time, to where reality isn't just as straightforward as we take it today in our society, where these people were experiencing something completely different, whether they were seeing the plasma forms in the sky, maybe the planet was in a different energetic state or place in the solar system or galaxy at the time, to where all of this was amped up. But it does seem like there is something migrating under the ground, some sort of entity or phenomenon that's responsible for so many legends. And maybe this thing migrates around the earth in different hotspots or portals or energetic places through these ley lines or something energetically, or tunnels through the earth. But it does seem like there's something that originates up there around Skinwalker Ranch and Blind Frog Ranch. And there's this pocket or underground system that, even when you go, like you said, all the way down into Mexico and out and around, it's so strange that it all points back to Utah. Like, it all goes up into this strange basin in Utah. Like, something happened there. There was an anomaly that occurred, and then civilization sort of was reborn out from there, or whatever.
Migrated outward.
Yeah, or whatever occurred was extra amplified up in that location. And so the residue of that is still amplified compared to our normal baseline of reality today. So when we go up there, we still experiencing that. So that's so fascinating that even the locals were sensing that. When Bigelow started doing stuff, they start doing things to try and draw it back or keep it there. And it's all underground with these tunnel systems. So you've been there, you've looked underground, seen some of these cave systems yourself. You've actually found some things. So what are some of the stuff that you've found or seen in relating to these cave systems and looking around on Blind Frog Ranch and Skinwalker Ranch?
Yeah, so some of the 3D ground imaging shows what could only be not natural formations, but something had to create it, meaning they had to dig it out, and it looks like rooms with a tunnel entrance. The other thing that was really interesting, in June of this year, I was out at Blind Frog Ranch with Chris Bartell, who worked for Bass for years as security at Skinwalker Ranch, and with Dwayne Ollinger, the owner, majority owner. And I had a lot of tech out there, and we were in one spot where we believe that there is a huge pull, or this energy of Towats, the god to the Ute. And that would take a couple hours just to talk about that recent finding, and going into the Nahuatl, the Nahua connection, the Aztec connection, because it's huge. But so I was there, and I had a deep scan gold metal detection unit. And at about 11 inches below, I ended up finding a Spanish coin. I believe it was 1810 or 11. I turned it over to Dwayne. And at first I was just going to throw it away because it looked like just, garbage metal. And Chris stopped me. And Dwayne overnight cleaned it. It turns out to be a silver real, a Spanish real, just before Mexico won its independence from Spain. But so what does this tell us? It tells us that there was some type of connection with the Spaniards or the Mexicans on Blind Frog Ranch. They were there. What they were doing there, there's multiple possibilities. Obviously, the easiest is they could have been trading with the indigenous people that lived there. But no less, here is this Spanish connection well before the LDS, the Mormons, got there. And it shows that it at least goes back to Spanish time. So now we have a possible connection between the Spanish mining for gold, or at least searching for Kirshenab. They wouldn't have known. They may have known it as, Temoacan, which the Aztec would have called it, or other. They may, the 7 golden cities and things of that nature too. But Temoacan is really the reality of what the Mexica would have told them, which were the Aztec at the time. But yeah, so you have this amazing connection now to the property, right in a spot that this summer I have to go back and do a little more research on, if you know what I mean. So I'll be spending several nights on the ranch with the GPR system, see what we can possibly find. But yeah, so that was just an amazing connection. Then I was able to dive deep into the petroglyphs, and guess what? Well, we found like the stick man in the petroglyphs, but it looks like it's an older petroglyph. And then they built and this was the Fremont culture. So we're talking about the year 0 to about 1300 AD. Was that one petroglyph looks out of place for the rest, and the ones around it look like people of large stature, and they're regal in how they're acting. So are we talking about white kingship of giants, and why place it with this other petroglyph? And that's right there at McConkey Ranch, Dry Fork Canyon. I mean, people visit it every day and they don't realize what they're looking at, because I have a database system that I've been putting together for a decade and a half. And then you follow it to, I've, over the last 15 years, come to believe that 4 symbols specifically mean a portal, an access portal for the indigenous people. 3 of those 4 are found there between 9 Mile Canyon and Dinosaur National Monument. And as you know, no matter where you're standing, if you're at 9 Mile Canyon, Dinosaur, or a Skinwalker Ranch, and you're looking up in the sky, you're going to see the same thing. So now we have these connections as, was this energy underground causing UAP to form or come out of a portal, or were they being attracted to the location? And then I think I sent you a photo of one of my slides where it looks like this this ship has settled down on 3 legs, and this anthropomorphic figure is coming out, and it looks like another figure is running through a tunnel underneath it, or maybe on a bridge. It's just really interesting. And that's at the Daddy Canyon complex at 9 Mile Canyon, between Price and Skinwalker Ranch. And obviously there's a mountain system in between it that has petroglyphs all throughout it as well. It's part of the Uintah, the lower Uintahs.
I'm trying to get these pictures off of my phone that you actually sent me. I'm going to pull them up on screen for everybody to check them out really quick here. But yeah, that's one of the things I've been up to, that the McConkey Ranch petroglyphs a couple of times. And the second time I was there, I didn't even notice the first time that some of those have 6 fingers on each hand.
6 fingers and big feet.
Huge feet, and then square heads, big horns, or whatever. And then you've got the name, what is it? You said the Starnaki, and you have
Starnaki.
I can't help it but hear the name like Anunnaki, like a different derivative of that, which we're all depicted as having horns and their artwork in different ways too, in a different culture. And so it's so strange how it all seems like it tied together with some sort of a global phenomenon in ancient times, but specifically up there in the basin was a real hot spot where that interaction between these giants and the people living there was intense, to where they almost worshiped these giants for quite a time. And then it seems almost like, and this is kind of, I don't know if you believe this or not, but it almost seems like that relationship really descended and fell apart, and maybe even turned into hunting and cannibalism at some point. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, so it absolutely turned. Remember that, if, let's say we start with the Nephilim, and then the Nephilim turned into the Amura, which were the Anakim, and the Ajiji. As they mated with humans, they decreased in size. And think about the Anakim and Starnaki, they're very similar, you know, and we're the Anakim part of the Adena culture, you know, out in Ohio, Missouri. It's possibility when you listen to other Native American tribes and their oral tradition. But so at some point, they turn into what the Paiute know as the Site-Ka, and they called them the Redheaded cannibal giants. You hear about it at Lovelock Cave in northern Nevada. And the Paiute got all these tribes together, and they supposedly exterminated the Site-Ka. Or they may have even some escaped and gone to Oregon, where then they just died out. But so they decreased in size as they mated more and more and became more Homo sapien than giant or close to whatever Nephilim Anakim. But when you talk to some of the elders, they say what may have happened was the tribes may have got together and kind of fudged it a bit and said that they were cannibals to get them to fight and kill off the Site-Ka. But the Site-Ka, and you saw it at Dry Fork Canyon with the Fremont, the earlier giants, they were definitely headhunters. I mean, they were taking heads, and that is shown throughout the petroglyphs. So could they have been cannibals? Absolutely. But here's what's even more interesting is I went to Reno, and for 3.5 days went through John T. Reed's boxes and boxes of notes and information and articles that he had donated when he died in 1943. And there was so much on the giants. It was incredible. But The giants, the Site-Ka, didn't go extinct until around 1760 or 1764.
You're kidding me. So they were running
you not.
around here even when there was modern people running around.
Modern people, and remember, the Spaniards saw 7-foot plus Native Americans walking around, and they had dark brown hair and reddish brown hair.
Almost like Bigfoot, like the Site-Ka are still natives that
Possibility,
are
yeah.
indigenous cave dwellers that are hiding in the underground networks or something. So let's see. I've got these petroglyph pictures that you sent here. We can go ahead and pull that up. This is the one that you said it does look like some kind of a UAP or landing with things coming out of it. Is this one? Where's this one located, James?
This is the Daddy Canyon complex at 9 Mile Canyon. What's interesting too is it looks like something is resonating out of it or beaming out of it that they saw. And I'm not sure if that's a bridge or a tunnel system, but on the far right, it looks like a little anthropomorphic figure running through it. So it's really interesting.
You have like it looks almost like a craft here with landing gear, like a tripod, energy coming out of the side of it. It almost even looks like a figure sitting inside the cockpit with two eyes. Here's the stickman.
One of those is a bullet hole.
One of these is a bullet hole?
Somebody used it as target practice.
People. Then you have, you have, here's a guy, here's like his goat, here's like the grass or something, like normal figure. And then they see this. This is the ground, almost like this is the mesa or the bedrock or something, or a cave.
Well, do you see right where you're at? Do you see the figure at the far right? It looks like it's running across it or through it right there. Yeah.
Right here. Oh.
Right there.
So it's like,
is that a tunnel system underground or is it a bridge?
Right. And then what's interesting is this is like a ledge, an overhang, and then under the overhang, like this could be a representative of a cave underground. You've got more going on. Like, who knows? Like how they would have seen that. It's so fascinating. And then I've got the picture of the coin as well.
And I always tell people too, Carl, obviously rock art is subjective. Only the artist knew what they were drawing. But when you put so much in one location of all this interesting anthropomorphic and zoomorphic figures and are missing daily life, it just makes you have to think of the other good alternatives and possibilities of what they were trying to keep in their historic data for future generations.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Of all the time that they had and the energy, you figure these are like primitive culture at certain levels. The time that they spend spending their energy doing different things is important. And so the fact that they would spend so much time telling this story and what they would carve up there would be so anomalous like that. It drives me kind of nuts that we don't quite understand what they were shouting at us all over the walls,
Right.
And we go ahead.
And some of those figures are like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 feet in height. I mean, imagine what it took back then to carve this.
Right. So this is, let's see. It's going to show this coin again here. So this coin that you found, this was found where now?
On Blind Frog Ranch at a location that we believe may have a connection to Towats, which is the god for the Ute.
And this is a Spanish coin?
It's a Spanish coin. I think it's a half real.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, and then just south of this whole region, what a lot of people don't understand is Sago Canyon, where you have these anthropomorphic figures, and these kinds of figures are all over the place. There's some like this near my home as well. Mostly they look like this central figure here. But yeah, you have to wonder what were they seeing, what were they experiencing, and then when you ask the natives, you ask the local indigenous people, their legends, they paint a totally different picture than our American history books do about what was going on in this area. And so why are they studying Skinwalker Ranch now? What does this have to do with what's going on today? So yeah, James, what do you think is going on today? Do you think that the phenomenon is still active, that it's being guarded to this day by something maybe paranormal or interdimensional that we don't understand? What's your theory on all this?
Yeah, so like I said, I think it's cyclical. I think it has its ups and downs energetically. And I think we're approaching one of those periods where it's more active. And absolutely, there's something. I think whatever occurred naturally created an energy that allows for a lot of strangeness or unexplainable events to occur. And I don't think anybody has the answer in regards to it. Is it the energy that creates the phenomena, or is it the phenomena attracted to the energy? And I don't know if we're ever going to have that answer. I think the first thing, while we work on our hypothesis and is to attempt to at least find what origin is. It's transient, which makes it more difficult, but are we at least able to identify an origin point? And then maybe we can go from there as to trying to see if what it's doing or creating is repeatable. Obviously, on Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, they're having repeatable events occur above the triangle, which is fantastic because it's not one-offs. That so much of the unexplainable always seems to be. So I'm a firm believer that probably one of the best places to look at is under the triangle, but not at a depth of 100 feet. We have to go a lot further down. And in order to access that depth, we really need to work on finding an entrance point. And I believe that entrance point is going to be up on the mesa or on the eastern portion. That's the Ute tribal land. And I'm sure at some point they're going to show, but there's a lot of cave entrances and caves up on the mesa that few people know about. The Freemasons, the 9th Cavalry, which was a black regiment that was originally stationed at Fort Duchesne, like 98% of the black cavalry, the 9th Cav, they were all Freemasons. So much so that their white captain allowed for them to have a Masonic lodge within the boundaries of the original fort. And up on just below Skinwalker Ridge is a what looks to be an upside down compass and square with a circle within a circle at the very bottom. But what I showed people was in this 1556 book called the De Re Metallica, which was written, I think his name was Agricola, explaining mining techniques and everything about locating, finding mines and mining, that it is more likely a marker that somebody left and either was the Freemasons or it was an older society or people that had the same belief systems and knowledge that the Freemasons now carry, and that petroglyph is actually going to show the entrance into the mesa. We just have to go there and look at and interpret the varas, which is the distance, and because it could have been the Spaniards that left that, or the Mexicans, not just the Freemasons. And there's a good possibility that, I mean, you're looking, but I always say, well, why did the Freemasons put things upside down? They usually do things perfectly. And if it was for a reason, to mark something. So it's just a matter of, if they don't let me do it, hopefully they get the right people to really take time out to study that, and then start doing the right 3D ground imaging scans, surveying scans, and hopefully finding that entrance. And then maybe we'll be able to get to what origin is, at least. And then we can go from there as to maybe advancing our hypothesis on what the phenomena is that's taking place there.
Yeah, that's super fascinating. So is the Masonic symbol, it's usually the compass is above and the square is below, pointed up. So this is, you're saying, is an inverted symbol? So
Inverted, correct.
the compass is
And the
down,
circle.
and there's a circle going around it, or is the circle like crossing
the
through?
circle within the circle is at the very bottom point of what would have been the square. So it's at the very bottom of the petroglyph.
Is there anywhere on there, is there a circle within a square?
No, it's just a circle within a circle, just like NASA and the Freemasons and the Ute. That's an important symbol in Native American culture. So you have just all these interconnections, you know, so it has to have some type of origin that's the same.
That is fascinating, because I've heard in other cultures that, like, the symbol of the circle within the square is symbolic of like dimensionality, meaning like heaven on earth. And then a circle within a circle would mean like a dwelling within earth or under earth, like something within the earth. And then you have the upside. Yeah, and then upside down Masonic symbol would be like the compass pointing down instead of onward to a new location. It's pointing down
into the ground, underground.
And this is all on Skinwalker Ranch on the ridge there.
Yep, just below the ridge.
And is it near the other petroglyphs within distance, the ones that look like the Polaris and Big Dipper and the Mesa itself carved in the rocks?
So I've never seen those, and I don't believe it's in the same location. The Masonic looking symbol is above where Homestead 1 is right now.
Okay. Yeah, which is kind of over to the east, like you said, on the east side of the ranch. Right.
And I think the other petroglyph is farther to the west.
Gotcha. But man, yeah, the whole area, I had no idea. So there's cave systems that go not only underneath the mesa there, but you theorized, just based on your research and everything, showing that there may be cave systems that go and interconnect all the way up to Dark Canyon and maybe through Blind Frog Ranch, all the way up, associated with the legends that go underneath these reservoirs and the history of the indigenous people, talking about them surviving ancient times and then underground for long, long periods. We're not talking about a short time. We're talking about multi-generations possibly having to dwell underground and build entire cities. Everything that you see above ground, there might be even more beneath the ground. We don't even know. So it's fascinating. James, do you have any more plans to go back up there anytime soon to further this research, and maybe have permission to go look around further? And what do you have going on there?
So end of June and first couple weeks of July, we have some plans. And we're going to be going to 3 locations. What's interesting is those 3 locations, one of them is near Blind Frog Ranch, and the other 2 are in the high Uinta Mountains. And I'm always fearful to give too much information, because if it is a secret society, I don't want them to know I'm coming.
Right. Yeah.
And obviously I would love to do some more studies on Skinwalker Ranch. And just look, because at the magnetometer readings that I showed in episode 6 and 7, it showed that underground system, and there was that underground running water. They're all in a perfectly straight alignment, and it goes right up at 8.34 degrees. Guess where? Right to the entrance of Blind Frog Ranch. So this transient anomaly, if that's what it is sticking to a specific game plan. And I honest to goodness believe that we can at some point track the origin, at least know where it's originating from, and then that'll just open up a million other questions that need to be answered.
Hopefully when you pop that open, it doesn't open up a portal and release something from another dimension. Then we'll have everybody trying to give offerings to get this thing to go back underground. And maybe that's what was happening in ancient times with all these temples being built and sacrificial offerings saying, please go away. No, I don't know. Right. James, this is really exciting. You've got a lot of really cool stuff going on. I'm thrilled that we have somebody who's able to go up and look at these locations. If you ever get the chance to take anybody with you, I vote that I want to go. Just hit me up. You've got my number. So I want to go look around. I would love to check it out. I'm really fascinated with how whatever's going on there affects us as human beings, how it affects our own human abilities and our own perceptions and consciousness, and what that says about us as humans and our own human potential, because this phenomenon is connected with us. It's connected with our history and who we are and our ancient past and where we're going, and it's still there, I think. And so, James, I'm really grateful that you're a part of all this and piecing it together, and not just feeding us the same story that everybody likes to feed about our past and what's going on with this phenomenon, and trying to piece it all together. So James, Keenan, any final words, and then let everybody know where they can find you and find your books, which I have put the description down below for anybody that wants to check that out.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you're invited if you want to come first week of July. It's going to be a few days of camping up in the Uinta Mountains.
I'm there.
My books, my books can be found at Barnes and Noble or on Amazon. And I appreciate it. You have the correct Amazon address on there, the URL for it. So thanks. I appreciate you having me on.
Great. Thanks everybody for joining us in the chat on this show on Carl Vibe today. And thanks, James, for joining us. Please go check out his books. Let your kids read all of his kids' books. Check out his research and stay tuned and follow him. He does have a YouTube channel as well. You should go check out, with a lot of really cool stuff on it. So James, thanks for joining us, and everybody in the chat. And we'll see you guys all in the next one.